Hello and welcome back to the Reject Pile with me, Luke Edwards. You join me as we approach the middle of a run of episodes for summer 2026, which have already featured a sitcom from Annabelle Edmonds and comedy sketch from Peter Beer, as well as our new visualized format, including video of the cast performing the material. I've been pleased to see some positive feedback on social media, with Mike on Blue Sky commenting on the cracking advice and excellent, insightful conversations that have made him want to get writing. It's great to know that the podcast is having an effect, so do feel free to get in touch with feedback via our socials at Reject Pile Pod on Blue Sky, Instagram, Threads, Facebook, and X, or via email to rejectpilepod@gmail.com. Ratings, comments, likes, and subscribes on Substack, YouTube, or wherever you listen are also most welcome. Now to today's episode with guest Sarah Kelly and her comedy sketch, Medieval Medicine. Up front, I want to give a potential trigger warning that the sketch features a vomit sound effect towards the end, so you might want to skip forward at that point. Sarah currently works in unscripted TV as an assistant producer, winning the Banijay Big Pitch in 2024, which meant she got to go to the Edinburgh TV Festival and meet lots of important people with job titles like VP of EMEA Sales, Warner Brothers, and have absolutely nothing in common with any of them. Sarah writes sitcoms, sketches, and scripts in her spare time and records them for TikTok and Instagram when she has the time and doesn't give herself the ick too much. Her words, not mine. She's currently working on a debut comedy novel, Toddlers Don't Solve Murders, about a mum who witnesses someone being pushed off a roof to their death before discovering that it's been reported as a suicide. She resolves to solve the case herself with toddler and baby in tow. One of Sarah's recent sitcoms, Wits End, was a quarter-finalist in the Female Pilot Club competition, so she allowed herself to be a quarter proud and three-quarters bitter and weepy. Other competition highlights include being a runner-up in the Curtis Brown Creative Writing Flash Fiction competition. The performers for Sarah's sketch were Annabelle Turner-Wheeler, Alexis Coward, and Amy Tobin. And once again, thanks to Rob Stevenson for sourcing the sound effects, even if one of them has resulted in a trigger warning. You'll be back with me, Sarah, and the Reject Pile script editor, Phil Stewart, after the sketch. Here it comes.
Jester, come prithee, the king has taken ill.
The king is stuck in a mill?
No, taken ill. You must hurry.
Can't someone else help?
The courtiers are still in their beds.
They're always off their meds. Don't see how that's any of my problem.
Hurry.
All right. Don't get your pantaloons twisted. Just let me get my shoes on. Like my bell ends?
I can't believe you're paid to be here.
Neither can I some days.
Doctor, what do you need? Jester here can assist anything.
He's ice cold. Bring him some mittens and a warming broth. I'll also need a pruny thorn for my herb tincture.
Ooh, or I could juggle.
Jester, now! The king is in pain.
All right, tough crowd. And I'll have you know I'm perfectly sane.
Are you sure he's not hard of hearing?
He's certainly hard work.
It appears the king simply indulged in one too many flagons of beer last night.
Well, that's a relief.
Here you are, sire, some kittens, the sloth, and phew. Come here, girl. The unicorn.
I didn't say kittens, I said mittens. And what am I supposed to do with a sloth?
I thought maybe a nice cuddle.
And where on earth did you find a unicorn?
It's medieval England. They're everywhere.
No matter. The king is simply headsore from overindulging last night.
Well, that's hardly news. But you mean I didn't need to run all these errands?
No, although you didn't actually manage to get anything I asked for.
And he's not deathly ill?
No.
Well, then why hasn't he laughed at any of my jokes?
Jokes? We thought you were deaf.
I'm not deaf, just trying to lighten the mood.
I think he's asleep.
So it's not that I'm not funny?
No.
Well, comedy is subjective.
Phew! In that case... Get ready!
Jester, please, I beg you, let him rest.
Sarah and Phil join me now. Hello.
Hello again.
Hello.
Welcome to the Reject Pile, Sarah. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
We like to start by asking our guest to tell us a little bit about the inspiration and the rejection story. So what was the story with medieval medicine?
So this was a sketch that I wrote for DMs Are Open, the kind of come one, come all sketch writing competition show that plays on BBC Radio 4, I think. It was the first round of sketches I'd ever written, having previously done scripts, sitcoms mostly, and a couple of dramas. And I was like, sketch should be so easy. It's only 2 pages. Yeah.
Quite.
And I had just had a small baby. I was on maternity leave, and I just wanted to achieve something that wasn't just keeping a small human alive, as great as that is.
Don't downplay it. It wasn't just keeping a small human alive.
Yeah. No, I thought, I'll challenge myself and do something else.
Something that's considerably harder. Writing a comedy sketch.
Exactly. No, I thought it would be a fun, different use of my brain, And they do 5 different topics, like themes. And I think this theme was actually help. And so the inspiration was kind of this useless best friend trope was sort of what I was exploring, the idea of like someone trying to be helpful, but actually not being helpful. And yeah, I think in the learning sense, I would say it doesn't come across that that's what the sketch is about at all. But that's fine. And then I also I had written a lot of scripts by that point, and I'd written, I think, 1 other or 2 other sketches for this show. And a lot of the feedback I'd got was like, it reads sort of like a scene from a sitcom as opposed to a sketch. So I then thought, right, I can try and push myself into a slightly more whimsical setting or context, hence medieval humour. A few ye olde jokes or attempts at jokes in that style. So that was the kind of inspiration and where it came from. And it didn't get in on the show.
Well, when I read the first draft, that note about it being a bit like a sitcom, I think some of that still was there. So there was material that was neither setup nor gag. And the thing about a sketch, really, it's got to be basically every line has got to be a setup or a gag, and just continually funny, get out. There are sketches that can be a little bit more pacey, but even then that's kind of building a setup. But there were lines that were kind of not really necessary. That's one of the things that I've said it on this show more than once, is just keep your sketches concise and just cut out anything that isn't funny or isn't a setup to a funny. And the concept of the sketch also needs to be introduced within the first couple of lines, so the audience know, okay, I get where we are, I get what we're going to be doing on this sketch. Come on then, show me how you can make this concept funny. And one of the thoughts I had on this one is I wasn't quite sure what the setup was. So there was sort of different ideas that I picked up on. I mean, one was that the jester wanted to entertain and was so desperate to entertain the king that he would do increasingly mad things to do it, or he didn't like the king and he wanted to punish the king for thinking his jokes weren't funny. But it was neither one or the other.
And the third option is he was just actually hard of hearing. So it was like 3 different concepts. Yeah, it was too mucky.
And so I highlighted these on the notes that I gave you. How have you, or did you, address any of this? Or what was your response to my notes when I said about those?
Yeah, sadly, it's like when you do the reread a couple of months later, you're like, oh, yeah, that doesn't make any sense. And that doesn't link to that. Or things that you thought were funny or were almost gags were actually just kind of throwaway lines. So yeah, definitely agreed with that. And I think the problem might have been that when I wrote the sketch, I didn't know which was true. Was it actually that he was a bit deaf? Or was it actually that he was trying to make jokes because the king didn't think he was funny? And I wrote the sketch not knowing where it was going to land, which is obviously the opposite of the point, because you should know from the top. So yeah, so when I rewrote it, I then changed the ending first and then worked backwards.
Okay.
So that the jokes work towards the ending.
I would say it's perfectly okay on a first draft to not know where it is you're going, because you can write in an exploratory fashion, just, I'm going to muck about in this world with these characters and work out what it is that I want to do with it while I'm writing it. Yeah. And then as long as you recognize that this is not going to be the final draft, you're just going, oh, okay, this is what I find funny. This is what's got potential. And then you cut out everything else that doesn't relate to that thing.
Yeah.
So, but you, as you say, when you were writing this draft and you submitted it to DMs, you hadn't got that level of clarity,
I
which would
hadn't
also,
gone, yeah.
yeah, and that would be very much one of the reasons why DMs wouldn't have taken it on board.
Yeah.
Because the thing that people kind of forget about sketches is they're not sitcoms, as you say, and they're not even a scene. They are meant to be the simplest of the comedy form. It's not meant to be a drawing. It is literally a thumbnail sketch of some silly idea stretched out to, done in the simplest form and then gone. And they can be of different lengths, but normally the traditional form is a character wants something and somebody's in the way and they try different ways to get what they want, and it gets increasingly like the pressure gets up, and then somebody will do something that will then twist everything around.
We did have that in the first draft. We had an escalation and quite an unexpected, I think.
Rather gruesome ending.
Yeah.
So well, Sarah, do you want to describe what happens at the end of the first draft?
The first draft, I'd kind of heard that principle of, the escalation is meant to be joke, 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 and then the end of the sketch is the escalation. And I was like, well, what's the word? The reversal of what a joker or a jester is supposed to do is like, they're meant to entertain, they're meant to be the lightest, happiest, friendliest people in court. And so the reversal of that is he kills the king. And then I think because of that, I was trying to find a mechanism where that would make sense, which then came in the hard of hearing thing, because he basically misinterprets what the doctor says is that like he should kill the king. So then he just does it to try and be helpful. So that's kind of where the useless friend thing came in. But yeah, as you got to the end of the first draft, trying to make that ending happen made the whole sketch kind of a bit nonsensical because is he actually hard of hearing? Is he not? I don't know. So the first draft, basically ends with the jester killing the king because that's what he thinks the doctor tells him he has to do, which is quite dramatic for a sketch. And I think that was one of the great learnings from doing this with notes as well, and doing like a whole rewrite of the sketch. But also since then, having written a lot more sketches and tried my hand at different styles as well, that core thing of like, actually, what's the core truth that I want people to sort of relate to, or that thing of like, oh yeah, I know what it's like when so-and-so isn't helpful, or like you're at the checkout at Sainsbury's and the self-checkout doesn't work the way you want it to. Like, I think that's what I've learned since then, of like trying to find those universal truths first. Yeah. And that's what I want the comedy to speak to, rather than just like, I need to have something that escalates to this slightly nonsensical ending.
Kind of contrived, I guess.
But the other thing is, on the original draft, I very much got the impression that the jester was very happy to kill the king. The line was, last time I performed to him, he said I'd rather die than listen to another of my jokes.
Again, it's like too confusing.
So it suggests he was like, he's not doing it just because he's told to and he's regretting doing it. It's like, no, this guy died. I'm happy to kill him because he didn't think I was funny. Now, that potentially could be a way of doing a sketch. You could have a jester who is vengeful and has attempts various ways to kill the king because of the bitterness, and then you do some kind of twist on that. So there's different routes that you could take, but it is very important, I think, to pick one and stick with one.
That was definitely the death of this sketch. It's like there's three kind of main concepts and none of them talk to each other, and as a result you're like, which one is the punchline? I think the hard of hearing was meant to be him lying that he couldn't hear, but then again that as a concept for a 2-minute sketch is just too many layers for someone to
Yeah, I think that's the thing that often comes up with these as well, is that confusion is the killer of comedy, and the audience are just baffled. I don't understand this one. There's too many things happening at once, pulling in different directions. And so the end result is that some of the bits, although, like I said, whimsical and, quirky, it doesn't land as a comedy sketch where you're exploring an idea. And I mean, that's the thing about doing, all of this comedy sketch writing and getting notes and getting feedback, is that it gives you the opportunity to really understand the form. And although people like to experiment with the form, I think it's really important when you're starting out to really know the conventions. And then once you've got that and you've mastered the conventions, then go off and, and then explore alternatives. But it's, and a lot of, a lot of people who are into sketch comedy, like things like Monty Python, but they, as a team, would have written more conventional stuff, or would have been, more used to it prior to Monty Python, and they would then used Python as a way to go against the conventions. And it was
Yeah.
deliberately, an anarchic pushback against the conventions of comedy, because that's what they were trying to do. But if that is then what's brought up as normal, then you don't necessarily understand the roots of which the sketch comedy form. Does that make any sense?
I think 100%. Yeah, definitely. And I think that gives cause for a lot of new writers like myself to kind of give up as well, like sooner than maybe we should, because it's that thing of like, you've got the taste level where you know what funny is, but then when you write, you're like, why is it not coming out the way, like, I know that there's a funny concept in there, and that's part of the learning, right? Like, how do you actually mine for the bits that are really funny and be able to cut the lines that aren't and not be so precious about them? And even the last year, I feel like that's where I've found way more enjoyment in it, because I'm a lot less precious about how many pages I've written or how many jokes there are. It's like the first draft is like, get it all down, get the worst concept out that like is sort of very nebulous, and then leave it, a week or so, and then try and come back and actually figure out where the funniest lines are and be just ruthless. And like, whereas this was very much my first attempt into sketch writing, and I was just like, but it's funny, or like, this character must be, and I'm like, no, if it's got more than two characters, like, are they actually doing anything in the script?
Well, this is something I mentioned on another episode of the show, is that if you've got multiple characters, are they necessary? And the idea of, the show always has a certain number of actors, I don't think is a valid enough reason. Only write and make the sketch work in and of itself. Don't just add in stuff to give people employment, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
It should be what works for the sketch.
Yeah.
The other thing is as well, which I clearly see that you've been doing because you've written subsequently and learnt, but nobody said writing was easy. And I think there is a kind of idea that, and you said before, like, you were having a child and you thought you'd write a sketch and you've done previous writing. Oh, that must be really easy. It's not. No writing is easy. You get better at it, and it becomes easier the more you do it. But it's, certainly when you're starting out, it's going to be difficult. It's one thing being able to sort of like muck about with your mates in a pub and just say quips and stuff like that. But actually sitting down and structuring a comedy sketch is work.
Yeah, and I think, now as well, we have access to like actually hundreds, if not thousands, of sketch comedians online, right? And it can look very effortless the way it's edited, and lots of the people that I follow and that are really, really funny, they make it look like they've just got their phone and started recording as, Sharon from the post office or whoever. But actually, most of them are very scripted, very structured, and often include lots of cuts, right? So they can make the best, funniest lines. I think it's true of any form of sketch comedy in this kind of phase of our lives.
It's not an easy thing. It's not instinctive. I'm just going to come up with a funny line. And I think if people do think, oh, I've come up with something funny, I'm just going to use that. Don't ever use your first draft. Even if it is slightly funny, you think, well, push it even further. Go back again. How much more can you get? If your first instinct is to do something that's quite funny, imagine how good you'd be if you actually put some effort in.
Yeah, and I think that's the craft. That is the work, right? Is actually applying bum to seat and putting words on the page, and then taking the time to go back through it and be honest about what works and what doesn't work. So the only thing I would say to counter that is, I am also a firm believer in like deadlines and any kind of competition. And DMs Are Open is particularly brilliant because it's free to enter. It's rolling week by week, so you kind of are then forced to just come up with a sketch. Like, it's sort of the rhythm of that, I think, is actually quite helpful if you are in a bit of a rut, or you've just, like me, written lots of scripts. I don't think there's any harm in just being like, I'm just going to try and write a sketch, and then, like you say, do the work afterwards and use those deadlines as a good jumping off point. Like, before that, I didn't have any sketches, and then I had 5 sketches, no more than that, actually, because I submitted 2 per week, so 10 sketches. Like, that's actually amazing to have in my arsenal. There's a lot of them that will never see the light of day, because I'm like, wow, they were terrible. But it was good to get that like initial,
Well, I was just thinking, just the practice of doing it, spending time doing it. Here's an idea. You don't actually need DMs to give you a prompt or a deadline.
Yes, exactly.
It's not crazy to have a random word generator on your phone and go, right, random word generator. Every
Love
Friday, I'm going to press that button. And then the following Friday, I've got to have delivered myself a 2-page sketch.
That's such a good call.
Boom.
Yeah.
Whether it's good or not, but it's just, I'm continually churning out new material. And I'm a big believer in quantity over quality. which I know it sounds like the wrong way round, but I think if you write stuff and finish it, you will learn a lot more by having just getting it done, even if it's bad. Move on to the next one, and then looking back at what you'd written earlier, you'll go, oh, I've learned something here.
And also making it, if you're that way inclined. I'm not a writer performer, but I know a lot of people that like comedy are. And it's like, yeah, if you've got nothing else, nowhere else to put it, and no one wants it on the radio show, putting it online, like, I know people have mixed opinions about it, but it is a free audience that, if your stuff is funny and finds its niche, can actually resonate internationally if it wants to do that. There's kind of nothing stopping you in that way, other than, like you say, that kind of self-imposed, like, am I good enough? Am I not? But you just will. You'll get better as you say, the more that you do it. Was it persistence is fertile? That's all Dan swear it when he was on the pod. It's just, churning out the jokes, I suppose.
I felt that the sketch, the jokes in it were in the wrong order. So in the sense, and I did put this in the notes, is that you should always leave your best joke to the end. Not just because it's traditional, it's a punchline, but it's a case of, if the middle of the sketch is really funny, and then that's the comparison for the next joke. And nobody wants to be listening to less funny jokes than the one they've just heard. So it's got to be incrementally getting funnier and funnier and funnier as you go along. And I remember that there was one gag that was quite funny, and then you did another one afterwards that was less so, and you just swap them over, and it's fine. It's just it does need to increase in how funny and how extreme they are.
It's escalating the situation, but also escalating the effectiveness of the gags.
Yeah, and I think the joke that you're referring to kind of has a bit of whimsy, because it's like, it involves like a sloth and a unicorn. So I think it's that kind of thing. It's like an escalation of the kind of whimsical nonsense of the scene, and then the next joke was just kind of a regular
Exactly. Where is the direction of the sketch going? I mean, I know you said that in this case you didn't know, but that was one of the upshots of it, is that you weren't quite sure if you were going to start being funny because it gets more and more exaggerated.
Yes. Yeah.
If that is the case, in which case then make sure that you make that consistent. Got to kind of make them all line up and be like dominoes, like line them all up and they go, yeah, that's brilliant. That's a bit, and you're building it up and building it and building it. They've got to earn their place, not just if they're funny or not, but do they belong in the sequence?
Yeah. And that was a really good note and very accurate, I think. And I did then switch it. And I think I might have even cut the other joke because it just also wasn't as funny. So it's that self-editing thing of being ruthless enough to be like, that doesn't actually match as well the rest of the sketch, or, isn't going to deliver the laugh, that it's more of a groaner rather than an actual laugh. You just cut it. Yeah.
The other thing is as well, when you cut stuff, if there's any resistance in you that goes, oh, I think that's really funny, keep it for another sketch. It may not belong in this one, but okay, you'll write another medieval sketch, and therefore you've got another context, and maybe one sketch is in fact two sketches, and you've got two things, and you could just split the sketch in half and put all of those sorts of gags in one and the other, and suddenly you've got two sketches you didn't even know you were writing.
Yeah, no, it's good. Yeah, I think it definitely, I really enjoyed the rewrite, and I remember getting towards the end of it, and with the new ending and stuff, I felt like it sort of matched the world and the tone that I actually wanted it to have. That sounds kind of like high and mighty, but not that I really intended that it would have that, but I think, it allows you, if you're able to be a bit ruthless and cut the stuff that doesn't quite work or doesn't quite fit, the whole thing feels a bit more cohesive and punchy, and then the pace just changes, so it feels like, I know where we are, and it's joke, and then you're out on a laugh, which is just much more satisfying kind of ending, isn't it?
I want to hear this now, basically. I want to hear what you've done with it, because it sounds like you've fixed all of the things.
No pressure.
No pressure.
Jester, come prithee, the king has taken ill.
The king is stuck in a mill?
No, taken ill. You must hurry.
Can't someone else help? So it's not that I'm not funny?
No.
Well, comedy is subjective.
Phew! In that case... Get ready!
Jester, please, I beg you, let him rest.
Sarah, do you want to start by sharing your reflections on hearing and seeing that?
Yes, thanks so much to the actors. It's lovely to hear it like in real life, and they were fab and brought I love it. I love hearing actors speak the words into reality. But yeah, it was good. I'd forgotten parts of it. It's gentler than the original draft, I would say, of like, it doesn't escalate to this insane place. And I actually quite like the kind of central character being this slightly needy jester who's like just desperate for everyone to think he's funny. Don't want to dig too deep into what that says about my psyche.
One of the things I noticed about it is that it still had that gentle pace to it. There was still material in there that was almost sitcom-like, albeit it a fairly high gag rate, but still it was like a situation, and as opposed to a real tight focus on one thing. So the timing between the mission to get the kittens and the sloth and the unicorn and the delivery of that seemed like a very long time away. So the audience would have forgotten necessarily that it was that thing. So I would have recommended that would have been a lot quicker on the comeback. Yes, I'll go and get it. Then you come immediately in with the sound of it, which is a bit like you originally had it, because otherwise the audience are going to go, what? I don't understand. And so the comedy timing was a bit off. And it's not the actors, I mean, just in terms of the script. And there
was like that gap. And I think I did change. I don't know can't remember why the logic was there, but sort of I think because I changed his character to then be not hard of hearing, he's just kind of pretending to try and make jokes. So then I tried to put in a line that was a little bit unnecessary, where the courtier's he's certainly hard work. So kind of suggesting like, oh, is he deaf? Like the doctor saying, is he deaf? Like what's going on? Rather than it being a character trait. But yeah, I agree. I also think the first third, where he's just talking to the courtier, I was like, oh, it's a lovely little episode of medieval sitcom.
Well, you don't need any of it, basically. What is the concept of the sketch? Essentially, there's one gag, like as in, he's been given an instruction to do, he goes off and gets something else that rhymes with it. I mean, that's the top and bottom of that sketch. So it feels like a setup there for other stupidly rhyming things, because that would be the funny part. The rest of it is just some nice bits with people being, like a little bit whimsical, and it's a bit nice, and it's well performed, and as always, but it's just like it's a bit long for the gag that is the core of it, if you see what I mean. So although you have taken out the confusion of the multiple threads going on, we've now got one thread that just takes ages to get there. There's not enough of it. So, and all the material about the deafness, and then he pretends to be deaf, and then he goes and gets the wrong thing because he misheard, and then it's because he's funny. Right, okay. Such a, and I'm like, it feels like it's, if we'd just gone, he does that, if the audience knew immediately that he's not actually deaf, he just deliberately tries to do stupid things to get a laugh, and they get increasingly ridiculous, like there's no way that he could have misheard that, because that doesn't sound anything like it. That, you'd have some, you know what I mean? If that's what the core comedy is. And then as for the ending, I'm like, the sketch ended when they brought in and we had the ridiculous, that was the punchline, and we're still here. And like, what are we, why is this sketch carrying on? It's a bit leisurely, and
And I definitely think since the rewrite of this, if I was to write it again, it would look completely different again, like a third iteration, because it's almost like, it just sounds like a scene from a sitcom. In a way, it was sort of giving like Brooklyn Nine-Nine, like the lead character of that, is sort of like, I'm a bit jokey, I want to make people laugh, which is kind of odd that that's what came out, because that wasn't necessarily what I was intending for the sketch. But then that being the ending, I think, like you say, it completely waters down the punchline and is almost entirely unnecessary. I do like the idea of the kind of insufferable person that won't stop, and then he's like, well, I must juggle, and you must all, and then they're all like, no. But the core of the sketch was, in theory, he's pretending that he can't hear, and therefore the final joke needed to be something about that, and it just wasn't there.
I think, I just wanted to jump in. I feel like for me, the stronger sort of material is the idea that the jester's so thin-skinned, that just so sensitive, because that punchline is sort of like the whoever it is, the character that's giving instructions to the jester, is sort of saying, well, just let him rest. It's not like you're really annoying and you're not entertaining us. It's still a kind of trying to pacify in a way, just like indirectly saying, please just let the king rest. So I feel like, as Phil sort of alluded to, you could make a sketch around that.
Yeah. I was going to say the alternative is the focus. You could have a sketch that is just about a jester who wants so desperate to be thought of as funny, and maybe they are, but then the punchline needs to be, but of course we think you're funny, or the other way around, or something like that, or something that's related to the central core. So again, I'm not unlike the original draft, is you've got two ideas sitting on top of each other, and you could pull them apart and make two separate sketches. Sketches really aren't a character piece, not really.
Yeah. Also, the practice of pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone, I think, is also really good just for writers to do. And this very much was that for me. If you've read any of my other work, it's very like kitchen sink sitcom, very much grounded in real worlds that I've lived in or been part of, or workplaces, or that kind of thing. So for me, it was definitely a kind of whimsical adventure. And I think what's interesting is what came out was this like character study of a slightly insecure lead protagonist.
But that's part of it, Sarah, because the whimsy's there as well. So yeah, I think Phil's already made the point. It's sort of like, well, which one is it? Choose one.
Yeah.
Go with it, exploit
You've
it.
got to run with that. Exactly. Yeah.
The other thing is, clearly you're more of a sitcom writer than you are a sketch comedy writer, because you're showing your sitcom writing, skills. And that's the other thing, is when you come up with an idea and you got to work out what's the best medium and form and for this. Maybe a sketch about this very needy jester isn't really a sketch at all, because it requires a level of depth and character arc and that sort of thing that doesn't really belong in a sketch. Unless you can. Sketches by the definition have to be very, very, very simple, and there's no real room for nuance as such.
And I think, I also like the sketches I enjoy are generally more like, just part of the real world.
Sarah, what you were saying right at the top, and I don't know if I've misunderstood, but I think what I heard you say is that the idea was this needy friend who's trying to be helpful and they're not. And then you took that and you transplanted it and put it in this medieval situation. Was that necessary? As you said, you like relatable situations. Do that in the present day.
Yeah, just do exactly.
Strip out all of the jestery stuff, because it's a distraction. The other thing is as well, I would say, maybe I'm wrong, but generally relatable stuff, if it's really realistic, is not really a comedy sketch either. Comedy sketches, by their definition, by their simplicity and their escalation within a very short period of time, is going to go outside of real life.
Yeah, relatability.
Because you've got a relatable concept. Yes, like you say, the supermarket machines don't work. But then the escalation that happens, it's got to be ludicrous. It's got to be more than real. And therefore, whereas you can write something that's more, kitchen sink and normal and relatable experience as a sitcom or as a play or something else, but a sketch, I think by its definition, is never going to be real life, slice of life, because I just don't think it's going to be funny enough if it's at that, for that length. We're only talking about a couple of pages or so, and the gag rate you need to get to is going to be, outside of reality, basically.
Yeah. 4 candles?
But yeah, that's ridiculous. They get increasingly more ridiculous, and 4 candles is terrific.
I suppose the ridiculousness comes from, like, obviously that wouldn't happen back to back to back to back.
Exactly. It is the sheer number of it. Yeah. And it ends with the escalation is, we've got to the point where we can't even broadcast this, what it sounds like, because it's BBC in 1978 or whenever it is. But yeah, that 4 candles, I still think that's punchline could be stronger, but still, it is a very good sketch because of the sheer numbers of they did the same thing, didn't they, with Harry Enfield did one.
Yeah, that's great.
Which is the tribute to it.
I will watch that. I've not seen that.
Yeah, it's a tribute to Ronnie. They did one, it was part of Red Nose Day, I think. But no, it's terrific. But it is the same sort of comedy idea of you've got you immediately understand the idea of how this sketch is going to work. How are they going to keep this going? How are they going to escalate it? But at no point do you think this is real.
So another thing that I just wanted to touch on is when we were going back and forth, Sarah, I don't know if you remember this, but after the notes from the first draft, the second draft that you came back with was then a visual sketch. So I wanted to explore that as to whether that,
Yes.
where were you coming from with that? Again, was it just a writing exercise for you or a creative decision?
Yeah, so I think the original sketch obviously was for a radio show. And then in reworking it, I was quite wedded to still am wedded to the idea of it being a medieval sketch and just playing in that kind of space. So then as part of that, I was like, well, jesters just are like physical comedy is kind of their, where they've started and where that kind of the bread and butter. It just was quite visual in my head, the way that he approached it. So his little bellends joke, like just that kind of personality is someone I feel I could kind of picture really well. And then I'm just obviously find it easier to visualize things because scripts are kind of visual mediums, even though they're written. So yeah, it just in my head it was just quite funny. And then in a kind of SNL type world that we're in at the moment, I could see kind of two actors pretending to be the unicorn clip-clopping across the stage. So things like that for me felt funnier visually, which is why, I just rewrote it like that. But yeah, I think that listening to it now, and the sound effects were great. So well done, whoever put those in. I really enjoyed that.
I've just thought of another note I would give on this one is that there's not a lot at stake. Yes, the jester wants to be thought of as funny. So what? What are the consequences of that? If there is some level of, if he's not funny, he will get fired or he will get hung or whatever it is that happens to jesters if they're not funny. You know what I mean? But some kind of threat or some kind of pressure. Because I think it's important, in comedy sketches for there to be pressure. And as I said before, the sketch is quite meandering and chill. I think that if the king was going to die unless they get this thing and, oh gosh, I've really got to get this thing right, and you put them under pressure a bit, you get there's more consequences because he's got it wrong. Yes, he's trying to be funny, but because he's got it wrong and he's trying to be funny, this has happened. And it's the worst thing that could possibly happen. So if the reaction to the wrong thing coming out, that kills the king. Something like that. So there's consequences.
And actually listening back to what you were saying about comedy timing, I definitely felt that in the bit where the king gets that, or the reveal is that always just hungover happens when the jester isn't there. So then that's where we lost some of that time, and then the punchline of the unicorn isn't. It just falls flat because you've forgotten that's what he was sent out to get.
Yeah, we already know that the king's not on death's door.
Yes, everyone's up to date except for the jester, and then it kind of loses its impact as well.
The thought was, why did you introduce the idea that the king wasn't ill after all? I don't see where the comedy is in that. It just deflates the pressure of the scene.
Yeah.
If we didn't know this information, what difference would it make to the scene? And again,
it's not in the first draft, is it?
No. So the escalation of the first one is that he is well, or he was killing him out of vengeance.
Yeah.
But he's kind of pretending that he misheard the doctor say kill, not pill, or something like that.
Yeah, I think I feel like that hangover bit still is there, and it's the remedy for the hangover is give the king a pill.
That's right. Yeah. But I totally agree. It then takes the energy down, and then you're like, oh, he's just hungover, and then it doesn't. Yeah. So I think it would need a bit of a rework.
I think one of the useful bits as well is when the actors laugh when they're trying to say a line, or the other actors laugh when they hear it, because that's your first audience. They've not read the sketch. They do this cold.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a cold read. They just handed the sketch, and if it's funny and they laugh, it's really useful for writers to be able to hear. Oh, right. So people do like this stuff.
Yeah.
And if they read it and they're not laughing, then clearly something needs to be done. And ideally, they should be laughing every other line. Basically, that's what you want to try. You want to try to write a sketch that is impossible for actors to perform because they're laughing so much. That's the aim. Try and break the actors, basically.
There's another thing, Phil, that you do in your notes I think I want to mention here because I think it's pertinent. You at the top, you sort of summarize it. You do like a one-line summary. I think maybe that could be a good activity for the writer to try and do and summarize what is the one-line summary for this sketch that I've written. Because it should, as to Phil's point, if it's a single comedy concept that you're exploiting, you should be able to summarize that. What did we have in the notes for first draft?
This one, it says, King's jester continually makes rubbish jokes in a serious situation. That's all I could kind of pull out of it. And that's it's not really very clear because it doesn't focus on a particular thing. What you're talking about, by the way, is a log line essentially, and having a log line for a sketch is a really good idea. I was talking to somebody the other day about how important log lines are for writers, even before you've started writing the sketch or the script of any sort, just so you've got that, what it is you're trying to achieve. Just be able to go, I want to write a sketch that's about this. Yeah, when you might write it, it might be different. And then you've got the choice of, do I cut it to go back to my original idea, or is the idea I've just come up with even better?
Yeah.
But at least you're kind of documenting the process, and sometimes you go, no, I'm going to stick to my guns because this is the best, funniest idea I've ever heard. You've got to have confidence and faith in your own idea as well. So if you could summarize this sketch, having heard two versions of it, at this point, you're shaking your head. You've got no idea. This is a problem.
But it does make you you go back to the original thing, like a useless friend tries to help. And then actually, like you say, you could strip away so much of it and go back to, and that could actually be very funny.
Why not? You could rewrite the whole sketch and just take out all of the unnecessary jester, king, all of that, set it in the present day, make it the simplest version of this sketch would be, like you say, I just want to have somebody who is desperately funny and their friend is drunk and needs looking after, but that person disregards their illness because they want attention. And so that's a setup for a sketch, but then it's, okay, where are you going to go with this? What's the most extreme direction you can go with? And then you've got to really, really pull at that thread to get something that is the funniest, the most exaggerated. Basically, there is no further this sketch can go.
Yeah. Logical conclusion.
The logical conclusion, exactly. That's what I was looking for. That's the thing about writing comedy sketches, is that you can churn out, gags and gags and gags, but you've got to be able to also know where does this end? And the punchline is got to be not just a marginally funnier joke, but we can't go any further with this. I can't, there is no more. This is the last word that could be said. And to be able to do that, you need to know what it is you are talking about and having that core focus.
I've got a question. I'd love to know what you both think about this. One of the things as writers that, a question that we're encouraged to answer for ourselves, but also, in pitching or what have you, is what's it about and what's it really about? And I think that's what we've just spoken about there. The first, what's it about? I think that is a good exercise for a writer to really zero in on the sketch. What's it about? How important do you feel that second, what's it really about, is in a comedy sketch?
It's very, very, very important, I think. I mean, you find it when you've written your first draft, and it's essentially the theme, and it's the heart behind it. It's why the sketch should exist at all, and what is the sketch talking about beyond the literal interpretation of what's going on. So, and I think that comedy is about pain and suffering and how you get through it. And so, and it's not I'm not the first person to say that. It's not just me being dramatic. You've got to dig deep into what this is really about. And if you can then identify that, then you can really give the thing some kind of energy, and it's ideally something personal to you. So it's that. Now, I don't think it's a good idea necessarily to know what that is when you first write, because then it can feel a bit labored and a bit pushed in your face, and a bit, I'm going to write a story about grief or something. But if you write a sketch and then you kind of analyze it and go, I've just suddenly done a sort of therapy session for myself there, and then you can go back in and tailor it so that those themes do resonate I think that even when people laugh, the reason why they're laughing is because they're feeling relief that something difficult has been examined. So yeah, I think it's really important. You don't necessarily need to do deliberately, but subconsciously, if you've got a good sketch, there's normally something in there that you're saying about the world in which we live.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the reason I was a bit like, oh, I don't know, is because I would agree to not lead with that when it comes to sketch, because that it can tend towards quite heavy or a bit worthy or a bit like overdone or something. So I think, yeah, the sketch comes from a place of like, yeah, you've got a core concept that's kind of funny, or this thing that kind of bothers you or has been in your psyche somehow, and then you start just writing the jokes and forming it and figuring it out. And then it's sort of like sifting, is it? Like the second draft or the third draft is when you're going, oh, that's actually about his wife, or it's actually about the fact that he can't talk to his daughter or whatever it is. But it should kind of come as that gets revealed as you kind of dig into the jokes and cut some of the stuff that isn't necessary, rather than starting with like, I'm going to do, and because I have read a lot of scripts, so I do read quite a lot of sitcom scripts. And a lot of them, sometimes one of the notes I have to give is like, it's reading like a drama. There's quite a lot of like family conflict and trauma and things, and a few jokes, but I'm like, yeah, sitcom and sketch, does predominantly need to be delivering laughs, consistently.
I
like you say, with that core truth. Yeah.
There's the Rockcliffe competition is coming back soon. In fact, it might be out by the time this comes out. But when I've done the script notes for Rockcliffe, then yeah, there's a sitcom one there, and people write comedy dramas, and it basically means half of this sitcom isn't funny, and it's just miserable.
Yeah, I would say the same. When I've read quite a lot of, not I did read for Rockcliffe, but as a drama reader. But when I read comedy scripts, the ones that hook you do sometimes start with a bit of heartbreak or a bit of misery or unexpected, terrible circumstances, but then quickly get into the jokes.
The old, more traditional sitcom like Fawlty Towers or Are You Being Served or something like that, those sorts of shows aren't made so much these days. I mean, Not Going Out is probably the only other one I can think of that's still being made. That's got a more conventional, we're going to have some funny bits and we're not going to have people just sitting around being unhappy.
Sitcom is definitely on its way back, isn't it? With the BBC's order of 6 new sitcoms, and like the pitch was out and out funny. We don't want a comedy drama, we want a sitcom. And so they're all in production now, I think. Well, I think at least 3 of them are in production. So it's exciting. So the time for sitcom is
absolutely
coming back.
I would love the return of the studio-based sitcom more, because there is something about live performance and you've got an energy there that I think makes things funnier. The total dominance of the sort of single camera, no audience comedies that I think has I think it's done its time. Thank you.
I think you're right. Multicam sitcom, it is kind of the golden, I don't know what we call it, standard, but it's that pressure of making a room of people laugh 3 times a page, minimum, is actually the broadcast standard. That's what we should be trying to aim for, both in sketch and sitcom. So it's quite a high bar, isn't it? But that's when it happens and the actors or the people do laugh. It's great.
There is a reason why, I don't know, Dad's Army and I'm trying to think of other ones, Red Dwarf, are still considered the peak of sitcoms, British sitcoms. And the more recent ones, obviously there are shows that still win awards, but I still think it's very difficult to beat that kind of more conventional, traditional setup. But maybe I'm old-fashioned, I don't know.
Well, it's also just a shared experience, right? Like it's a different, an appointment to view television. So you sit down and you watch it and you expect to laugh. That is quite a high standard. And I think the commissioner's got a bit nervous about whether they could deliver that consistently. And yeah, comedy drama had a moment. But I feel like now with SNL UK and these 6 commissions, I think they're all single cam, to be honest, but I don't actually know. But I do think there's a bit more of a hunger for and a reason to go to a studio and watch something and see whether it makes you laugh or not. So hopefully it'll start to have a resurgence.
I think the single camera ones are quite cheap to make as well. Filling a studio and making it more conventional, I think, is more expensive to do. But I like the idea of having an audience and making people laugh with your actors and your sketches and your scripts. I mean, like Fools and Horses. I mean, it's still considered great, and you can see pictures of the audience sitting there with the studio, and it doesn't feel like, I don't know, I don't know. It wouldn't work without the audience, I don't think. And there is an episode of Fools and Horses that doesn't have a laughter track, and it's really weird. I don't know if you've seen that one, but it's shot on film, and it doesn't land, and it's one of the least popular episodes because it doesn't have that same feeling as we're all in this together and we're all going to have a good time, and it's high energy, and it's, you know,
A lot of it's resonating with me because to, call back to what you were saying about how we approach the production on this podcast, I want to try and get that authentic laughter, not just because it's helpful to the writer, but also hopefully it's a better listening experience for the listener to this. And, I've heard, I think, Sarah, you were saying earlier about how people can self-produce content that feels like sketchy and was studio audience-y, but doesn't have laughter. It's like that Only Fools episode. It's like something's missing here. It doesn't feel quite right.
I completely agree. There is a reason why, say, like the John Finnemore souvenir program, they do the sketches in a, and they get an audience to sit and watch them perform them.
Like DMs are
and
open.
I've been there, and it's terrific.
They have an audience for DMs are open, like radio comedy in front of a live audience. There's something about that. And I think it's innately human. Why do we laugh audibly? It's a human connection thing, isn't it? We're communicating through our shared experience of joy and humor.
Well, also, I mean, not to make it too sitcom centric, but there's a couple of competitions that the kind of finalists, the final 6 or final 4, do like live read throughs. So Sitcom Mission, if you get to the top 6, and Female Pilot Club. The kind of big part of being a finalist, one of the prizes, is you get to sit in a room with actors reading your work and bringing it to life. And I do think it's like invaluable hearing what works, and also just seeing the choices that actors make. I just love that part of it. It brings it to life in a way that you often is unexpected as the writer as well, which is a really fun bonus.
So before we wrap up, Sarah, do you want to tell us a little bit about how you respond to rejection?
Yeah, I think usually with a large glass of wine and taking to my duvet for a couple of days. And I think it's good to just be honest about that in a very kind of hustle culture, and everyone's likes to post their successes. And I do as well, don't get me wrong. It's good to celebrate the successes, but I also think it's just very good and healthy to allow yourself to be sad when you don't get shortlisted or that thing doesn't come through. So one of the ways they deal with it is just being sad and being annoyed and sort of spitefully reading the bios of all the winners and being like, how? And then obviously being horrified of how successful they are. Then also remembering every time I'm in that kind of like slump that it's just, this is part of it. And the win of it is that you met a deadline and you delivered some work. You got words on a page. And that for me, I've found like in phases of my life where I haven't been able to write, or because of just busyness or like, the lifestyle or whatever. And that's the bit that I missed, is the worst, most difficult part of sitting down and trying to write something. So trying to remember that that's why I do it, rather than for any kind of accolade or big success. We all want success. We all want, for people to see our work and find it interesting or funny or whatever. But I think it's good to just remember in those rejection moments that, if I don't write, I go a bit mad. So I may as well carry on writing and on to the next one. So that's my process. I wouldn't say it's the healthiest, but it's working.
I think it's very healthy. I think just not giving up. And if you do get a bit stuck, not you, but anyone going, I don't want to write comedy sketches, write something else. As long as you keep writing. Today, I wrote 4 poems, genuinely, this morning. I'm not a poet, though apparently I am. And I submitted them to this London Verse, which is a website encouraging people to write poems. And so I thought I'd give it a go. And I've got 3 haikus and a free verse thing that I just sort of knocked up today. I just suddenly thought that's a win, and it will help re-spark the fact that actually maybe I can write, because it can really hurt when someone says, it's with no notes, just a flat no rejected. And it can get to you going, I should give up on the whole writing malarkey. Just put it somewhere else.
And I think, there's so many like small wins like that you can build into your routine. So I think for me, like I do like a deadline. I like the kind of external pressure that helps me just to produce something. But then once you've got something like that, and then you think, okay, I've got to apply it. I want to submit it to such and such competition. When you then look back like a year later, it might not be anything like what you would write now, but it's part of that journey to, like a kid learning to read or whatever. you have to start somewhere, and you have to know that the part you're in now is a part of that journey towards what you might write in 5 years or 10 years that could be really impactful to somebody. So yeah, I like a deadline. I think it's good to know kind of as our competition's going around and just trying to give yourself a pat on the back for getting it in, because a lot of people sit, on their sofa, watching Netflix of an evening, and they want to do the things, they want to be a writer, they have stories inside them, but they don't actually take that step and be vulnerable enough to put it on the page. And that is hard. That's the win, right? So
The other thing to add on to that is that everybody good was bad. They were terrible at some point. They just didn't
apart
tell
from
anybody.
maybe Lin-Manuel Miranda, I feel like he was like born great,
But he wasn't. I mean, I'm sure you've seen the Hamilton thing that he did for Obama is not the same as the final show. And there are things that work and there are things that have changed. Originally, it was going to be a concept album, wasn't it?
Concept album, yeah.
But what he realized, and he sort of explored it and turned it into the massive show that it is. I've got notes on that as well, but when I meet him. But the point is, things develop, and I think that I'm sure that when he was about 5, he was writing something that's not as good as it is when he was 10, and it's just continual practice. You'll get better and better and better the more you do, and just being okay with where you are is the important bit, and just trust the process that you will eventually get better.
And yeah, being open to feedback, right? Like that's
absolutely
such an asset at the moment. Like I think there's loads of quite democratic access. So like people applying for DMs are open. Some people then like form a WhatsApp group, or there's the London comedy writers, if anyone's London based, that kind of meet up and read scripts and stuff. So there's actually quite a lot of resource, I think, now compared to say 20, 30 years ago, where it was sort of like we have these exec producers and they hire writers and no one else can ever know how that happens. Like there is a lot more shared knowledge, and I've had great notes from so many different writers that I've just met anecdotally that we swap scripts and give each other feedback. So, but you have to be willing to be humble enough to like go, oh, actually, you're right about that. That doesn't work, or that character is the same as that character. It's hard to be honest with yourself, but that is where the growing and the improvement happens, right? So rejection is just rubbish. Like no one enters a competition to lose.
I was going to say the idea of enter a competition to lose. Don't worry about it. Just do the entering part. And that's the deadline is the important bit. Don't get too emotionally attached to the win being, I'm going to be a famous writer and I'm going to be paid because those people that have got a career as a writer are so few. There are so very, very, very few successful writers who can make a living out of it. And so don't attach emotions to being this, very, very unlikely person. But what you can do is think about the wins that you can control. And yes, you can submit something to a competition, and whatever the result is, you did that.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's the quantity rather than the quality. Just keep doing it. Just keep turning up.
So that sets us up for what is next, Sarah. What are the things that you're working on at the moment or looking to get into, and where can listeners keep up with you and find out more about the work you're doing?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I currently have a sitcom script, of course, in kind of rounds of competitions. Yeah, always recommend people try and churn out a script, make it good, redraft it, and then submit it. Competitions run like every year. And then I'm also writing a cozy comedy crime novel, a bit like you, Phil. And I was just like, I need to do something that isn't a script. As much as I love the format and the medium, I think part of me was just a bit sad. Like, being like, I just want to see it. I love actors and I love what they do with scripts. So this was just an opportunity to use that side of my brain in a way that was completely visual. I could describe everything that was happening. It didn't have to be the kind of structured way that a script runs. So that's just kind of a fun little side project that turned into let's just run with it. So that's going on, and I'm only 20,000 words in, so we're starting the mountain that we're going to climb, but it's okay. We're enjoying it on the way. Yeah, and then I continue to just write sketches as and when competitions come up, though perhaps I will start setting my own deadlines, who knows, and just try and write one a week. It's a bit scary, but I'll try. And yes, people can follow me on Instagram at Sarah Dawn Kelly, all one word, all lowercase, or on TikTok, the Clock app, at Sarah the Sometimes Funny Mum, which doesn't quite roll off the tongue. So yeah, you can follow. I don't have any plans or thoughts beyond getting my laundry done and keeping my tiny humans alive this weekend. But we write because it keeps us sane in a very insane world, and it's fun. And sometimes I make myself giggle whilst I'm typing on my laptop. It's great. It's great fun. But thank you so much for having me. It's been
Thank you.
so wonderful to be able to talk all things comedy and lament the jokes that weren't there and didn't deliver. But it's all learning. It's great.
Well,
Yeah.
thanks so much to you. Thanks for joining us
Ooh, yeah.
and sending medieval medicine into the reject pile. Thanks, Phil, as ever, for the notes, feedback, and discussion.
Thanks.
This has been the Reject Pile. I've been Luke Edwards. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.